have you guys ever been out to the Santee Drive In? You ever checked it out? I remember going there about hmm, 12, 13 years ago. And I remember I brought my son and a couple of his friends, and we saw a cartoon movie. I can't remember which one it was. And it was like monsters and aliens or something like that. And it was a fun cartoon movie. And we went to the drive-in theater in Santee, and it was really cool. So apparently, though, it's about to be sold. It hasn't been sold yet, and so a lot of people are like really freaking out. What's going on with the Santee Drive-In? So a developer wants an industrial building on the site, but this isn't the first time the iconic venue has entertained a sale. So apparently on April 14th, a Los Angeles-based developer submitted paperwork to the city of Santee to buy the dozen acres that host the drive-in and the swap meet. And if maybe you've driven by it, it's like right there on the 67 when you're in Santee, Lakeside Santee, right by the border there. And this company, North Palisade Opco, wants to, quote, demolish existing structures and clear the site entirely. And in its place would be a new industrial building about 50 feet tall and more than 291,000 square feet that could be used for warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, assembly, research, development, as well as related office uses. So people have this romantic idea about drive-ins. It's like a call to our past, and people love them. But the world's changed. I mean, people, like, we're talking about how we're watching television and streaming. People watch entertainment in very different ways now than they did in the 1960s and 70s. People also are realizing that real estate is a lot more valuable now, rather than using it as a place like a giant parking lot with a screen and a snack bar. Now they're realizing, yeah, the commercial opportunity for that land is significant. Well, according to Susan Boyd, who's the owner of the property, she said, "We could not keep the drive-in in business if we didn't own the property. But everyone has a tender spot for it from it being there for so long." Apparently, this drive-in in Santee is reportedly one of only a few hundred open-air theaters left in the nationwide. So my question to you is, when was the last time you went to a drive-in theater? Now, I remember as a kid, little boy, I would go in the back of my mom's Chevy. And I remember my mom and my grandmother would be in the front seat. I'd be in the back seat. They put me in my pajamas, and I was probably 4 years old, 5 years old. And then they'd watch the movie, and I'd sleep in the back seat. It was actually perfect. That way they could go to the movies and they didn't have to worry about a babysitter because I was with them. And the Burlingame Drive-In was just like right across the freeway from where I grew up. And then later on, when I became a teenager, and we used to go there all the time, and boy, we had a lot of fun. Just hanging out with friends, watching movies, or, it was just a place to be. It was just kind of a fun little thing to do. And it was such a different experience than going to a regular theater. In fact, I remember I saw Star Wars, the first movie, A New Hope, in 1977 at the drive-in movie. So at the time I was 12 years old. And I remember being totally confused, and you can't hear everything really clearly through that speaker that's like hanging off of your window. But God, I just a lot of really positive memories going to the drive-in for me. And I remember seeing movies there with my buddies. And then the second feature, because there was always a 2-feature deal, which made it really good. The second feature was so often it was either Airplane or Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I think I've seen those two movies like unlimited numbers of times. But even the drive-in Burlingame is now been blown out of the water. It doesn't exist anymore. It's now all office buildings there because that real estate is just so darn expensive. Yeah, it's kind of sad. I think it is going to go away. Pete Neal on the live stream commenting here. He says, drive-in theaters are great fogged up windows and everything. Yeah, mea culpa. I was one of those too back in high school days. So I can't imagine that this is going to be saved. I think, again, it's people clinging to their memories, and it's like a soft spot in their heart. Now, I'll tell you one funny story is back in the early 80s when I was still in high school, I was, my sport then was BMX racing. And boy, we used to drive all over the place to go to races. And by the time I turned 16, my parents no longer had to drive me. I was able to drive myself and I had a couple of other buddies that were my age, and we take turns and we would drive to Sacramento or to Reno, to Fresno, to Santa Cruz to go to all these races. And it just was, I just lived and breathed that every Saturday and Sunday. And I remember one time we were driving on Highway 80 and we were in between Vallejo and Sacramento. Can't remember exactly where, probably near Fairfield or what other cities are along that way. And I remember looking out on the side and there was an X-rated drive-in theater. And we're like, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. And, of course they had the screen turned away from the freeway. But I mean, unbelievable. So I can't imagine that's still there anymore. But that was just kind of a goofy thing.